Hi everyone, this is Pierrick from P2design. I just came back from the Blender conference and as always it was a blast. During the event I premiered this concept trailer we made with my friends from Atypic Studio. Check the link in the description if you missed it. With action-centric animation like that, you often want to convey speed. And what better than stylized VFX to do it? Here are some tricks I used in that specific shot. Well, moving fast means covering a lot of ground in a short amount of time. But what if I tell you that in this shot, the camera is not moving, and the ground neither? So basically, only the character is moving in this shot, and here again I used quite some tricks. Like here, you can see him running on the spot. And here, I'm faking an exaggerating perspective to get better poses. The goal is to avoid animating both the camera and the character, as it can harm that animation style. I talked about it in this video, check it out. I don't know if you're familiar with an anime called Captain Tsubasa, an anime from the 80s, and yes, I'm that old. And since it's an anime, characters tend to talk a lot, to themselves or to their friends, while running in that case. Since anime artists are always looking for a trick to reduce their cost, they used these Earth-sized stadium effects to allow their characters to say what they have to say without having to animate kilometers of background. There are three main tricks used here. The character runs on the spot or almost, they are faking the grass scrolling motion, they fake extreme perspective by bending the ground. Regarding the character animation, I created contrast by making him moving side to side to feel that speed, and then, as he turns toward the camera, he almost runs on the spot and accelerates. The character was animating in an empty background at first. I then work on the background. This way the character is what matters the most, and the background is used to emphasize the animation of the character. If I use the same effect with a simpler run on the spot, you can see it works very well. To even increase more the feeling of speed, I changed the ground shape during the shot. But how does all this work? Well, the ground is just a subdivided plane with a panning texture, and I used a couple of shape keys to bend it inward and outward. So basically my workflow was to first get a nice movie grass texture, mixing a wave and a noise texture together. I will use the UV coordinates with a mapping node, and then I will add a noise texture with its own mapping node, allowing me to change its scale to stretch the noise. It's okay to plug multiple mapping nodes one after the other. One is to tweak my noise texture, the other is to animate both, making them pan on the surface. From there, I'm just mixing both texture and convert them using a color ramp set to constant. From there, I can use the X location of the first mapping node to animate the panning of the texture and the Z rotation to orient it as I want. I also slightly animated the plane rotation and adjusted its position, and here we are. It's pretty similar to using speed lines, but it also defines a surface, giving more structure to your shot. If you want to learn animation, rigging and much more in Blender, discover my extensive courses on P2designacademy.com. Learn actual professional techniques or enjoy all my exclusive free character rigs only on P2designacademy.com. Since I didn't want to use speed lines on this shot, that would have made it a little too busy and wouldn't fit the overall style of the shot, I was left with the background elements to convey speed, but I didn't want to draw complex moving background referencing the previous shots, like houses, electric poles, trees and whatnot. What's way easier is to create simple shapes and silhouettes that make you think of these assets and then smear them. The benefit of using silhouette is that you can fake atmospheric perspective by blending them with the sky using a solid color fading as the assets are further away from the camera. We kind of recognize the asset featured in the shot, so it doesn't feel like it takes place somewhere else. But we don't have to draw details or use perspective. Then, when it comes to design, we want to smear these shapes to fake speed and motion blur. And when it comes to hand-drawn VFX, we tend to use pointy tone and sharp shapes for fast elements and rounder and more defined shapes for slower elements. Check this video to learn more about designing 2D VFX with Blender Grease Pencil. If you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking it, leaving a nice comment and subscribing. I used Adobe Animate for the 2D VFX because I feel more comfortable with it, but the workflow is the same as if you were to do it in Blender. You can start by creating a reference layer if you feel more comfortable doing so with well-defined silhouette, and then for that style you can use a thick grease pencil stroke with full transparency to redraw these shapes with horizontal lines that follows the flow and perspective. After a few drawings using large spacing, you get the result. I used the same effect on both the background and the clouds. T on these frames how we barely understand the cloud silhouettes as I used the smear effect we just talked about. But when the motion switched from side to forward, everything stabilizes for a few frames and we now see a house, a tree and whatever was in the background as clear silhouette that disappear behind our faked Earth-sized ground. Again, that's a neat trick not to have to draw these elements anymore. When traveling, you may have noticed that the bigger and the further an object is, like clouds, the slower they move. Well, make them move faster. The trick here was to distort them as if they were seen through a fisheye lens. It's a little harder to design and animate, but you get more dynamic shapes. And moving them fast with that kind of distortions feels a little more natural, and I think it's a pretty badass effect. We do identify them as clouds, so our brain is strict and we can feel the speed. The last trick is exaggeration. If you were to run that fast, the strength applied to the ground to get such momentum will be quite exceptional. That's why I added this big puff of dust. It creates a visual pattern that lets us know where the character was on the previous frame. So animating them with large spacing conveys even more speed. And, well, you know, in all cartoons, when you run fast, you make dust. This effect was directly drawn in the shot. You can do it with a single grease pencil object and draw from the camera view. Look how I reused the smear effect on this last couple of frames. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.